Okay, I have 4:15. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Please rise and join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call. Sam Martin?
Here.
Bob Freeman? And Rick Morgan is here. We do two public inputs. The first one is to allow people to have a chance to have public input before we start into the folders full of business. So, public input.
Yeah, you're public. We're a public.
Hi, my name is Luke Thanos. I own the hitching post, building, down the road here, and there's a tax deed that's coming due on.
Can I stop you right there for a second? I understand that there is a situation. Because it involves taxes and your personal finances, that is something that we would normally do in a non-public session. So if you would, unless you want to discuss it publicly, it's something that we don't normally discuss in a public forum.
Well, because a few weeks ago when I was speaking with Kelly Skian and I applied for the extension, which was granted under the contingency that I pay $2,000 per month until the end of August, and I just wanted to come to the council to kind of plead that $2,000 is a little too much, and I was wondering if I could get something a little more affordable. And in the meantime, we've put the house onto the market, and we're trying to get a good price for it. And I've got a real estate agent, and I'm using Craigslist, and I've got a bunch of resources. We got rid of one of the bad tenants. We're painting it, we're improving it, and so hopefully I'll be able to sell the house as soon as possible in order to cover the taxes owed. And
All right, and I only want to renew that we had you on the agenda to discuss this matter in a closed-door section. If you choose to do so publicly, you can do it. It's not something we normally do because I just don't want to say anything that's going to cause you any embarrassment.
all right, so can I make an appointment with you?
You're already on the agenda. If you can hang loose, we will meet with you before the end of the meeting. It's going to be a little while, but we'll do that in a non-public session, which is normally where we would discuss tax matters, okay?
Beautiful.
All right.
Thank you.
Somebody else, public input? Yes, ma'am.
I have an issue with Ossipee PD.
Okay, your name?
Jamie Catlin.
Okay.
2 weeks ago, actually today, a family member was arrested on Long Sands Road. And not only did the PD take almost 30 minutes to remove her from there, they were told that she was waiting for her 5-year-old son to get off the school bus. While there were other family members there, they still paraded her in front of the school bus, in front of the bus driver, in front of all the kids, and her 5-year-old son.
Okay.
And I have contacted Jimmy Eldridge with no repercussions, no nothing to the officers involved. They were extremely rude. They were swearing at her. They were yelling at her. And I was wondering if the selectmen at all could get a little handle on their police department.
Okay. You said you have conveyed this to the chief
Oh, yes.
by phone and
Oh, yes.
when?
1 week ago, 2 weeks ago tomorrow.
2 weeks ago tomorrow. And when did this happen?
2 weeks ago today.
Okay. All I can tell you at this point is obviously we will meet with the chief.
I
We
can
will,
give you the officers' names too if you would like.
if you would provide all of that information to,
Rob Ripley
Okay.
and Justin Swift.
okay? We will meet with the chief and we will talk with him and get you a response.
Okay, because I have several witnesses that can attest to everything that I've just said. Also, I do have one other question, is why is there now 2 officers being stationed at the school twice a day?
There's not normally 2 officers.
Oh, there has been for 2 weeks.
You're gonna let me finish answer your question or not? I can tell you that 2 officers are not normally assigned to the school.
No, last 2 weeks they have been. One parades up and down the stands in front of the crosswalk, the other one walks up and down the sidewalk in front of the school.
Every day.
Every single day, morning and afternoon.
Okay, we will check in, get back to you. I
Because
don't, I don't
she's
think
giving out
that's,
tickets.
I know that there's not 2 people assigned there, so,
Yeah, I know she's giving out tickets and ushering kids out of cars, morning and afternoon.
okay. Anything else? Okay. Anybody else, anything else under public input? Go ahead.
Mine seems kind of trivial, but I go to I'm Lois Sweeney from Ossipee Corner. I go to the memorial service and the Veterans Day service that the VFW puts on out front here. And I find it very distracting that the cars and trucks and motorcycles go roaring by while we're having whatever, prayer or whatever. And I was wondering if it was possible to either block off the road for that half hour that it takes, because you could do it, so they could still go into the school and they could still go into the businesses, just not pass here. If not, would it be possible to move it to the gazebo now that we have one?
I actually, I spoke with Ms. Sweeney after I was delivered the selectmen's address out here, and I understand exactly what she's saying. I concur. I have thought about it quite a bit since you and I talked, and logistically, I'm not exactly sure how that would work, because we do have to allow people still to get access as far down as the school.
Right.
And once you get there, there's not a way to reroute them without having them turn around and go back down and around. So it's something that I think we should look into, and maybe moving it up to the gazebo would help. I'm not sure. One of the things that did happen this year is there was some confusion. The town of Ossipee historically has celebrated observed Memorial Day on the traditional Memorial Day, which is the 30th of May. And somehow this year it got scheduled on both the 30th and the 31st. So we had 2 Memorial Day services. Once that gets resolved, so we don't have that, then we can work on trying to do it in a place where it'd be a little bit quieter. Certainly nobody going by, I don't think is doing it intentionally, it's just they're going by, and we're very close to the road out here, so I think you get a very valid point. We'll maybe discuss it with the chief. I know one of the issues, I don't know how many more they would have, but 3 or 4 of them were participating in the program doing the color guide, so we'll talk to them and see what they say.
Thank you.
Anybody else have anything else at this point under public input? Craig?
I would just like to discuss what the table and chair policy is here for the gym, just because I'm unaware of what it's been in the past.
Okay.
So I had a woman come in last week asking if she could, put a $50 deposit, the same deposit down for the gym, but not use the gym, just use the tables and chairs, in which I was unsure. I know Ellen and I talked, and some people use it as a way to get around renting the tables and chairs.
Mm-hmm.
And, and I can see why. I mean, I understand that they are taxpayers and they do pay for this stuff and at the end of the day, but I'm just not sure what's the right answer, because instinctively I want to say no, because they belong in the facility where they should be.
Mm-hmm.
But the way it's been done in the past, I know that it was used for a wedding two weekends ago, I think. And therefore, I don't want to say no to this woman, even though there is a conflicting thing in the gym that day. But I just want to know what.
I'm not sure that we have a clear
We
policy.
don't have a clear policy, and I know we discussed it at least 2 years ago, and we decided that it was going to be on, not necessarily on an as-needed basis, but we were gonna take every situation, because, what's happened in the past is people have taken them, and they've actually taken them out of town. So we tried to restrict it to just Ossipee residents, and then the question came up that if they destroy one table, the $50 deposit doesn't even cover the cost to replace the table, so. We haven't had anything come up since it was brought into question 2 years ago, so.
But we also haven't had any destroyed tables or chairs.
Correct.
Well, that's also, I mean, I don't really have a good inventory of what they take and what they don't take. Now they can take 50 chairs and return 40, and I really wouldn't know because I wasn't here when they took them, or Slade or Chris, so.
Well, that's potentially a problem, but at the same time, if we've been loaning them right along and we're not losing any,
I think with this.
I'm not necessarily in favor of fixing a problem that doesn't exist either.
Well, I think what we should do with this one woman who asked, I'll see how many tables and chairs this birthday party wants this weekend, and then I can allot this certain woman X amount. But I think after that, I think it's either, if it's in the gym, they can use it. If it's outside the gym, then they can't.
Yeah, we'll discuss that some more, and I do think there needs to be a more clear policy.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily like doing it on a case by case, because the rules need to apply equally to everybody.
Yeah.
But let's see if we can't find a happy medium, so. Okay? Do you have anything else under public input? All right, if not, we're gonna start into the red folder. The first thing we've got is the minutes of the Selectmen's meeting, which occurred on Monday, May 22nd. I make a motion, we accept them as printed.
Second.
Any discussion?
No.
All in favor? Aye. We have the minutes of the Selectmen's meeting, which occurred on Tuesday, May 30th. I make a motion, we accept them as printed.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. We have a copy of the Ossipee Economic Development Council's minutes, which are here in the folder for anybody to look at if they would like. We have the check voucher totals, payroll for week ending 6/3/2017. It's $34,310.20. Payroll taxes of $10,878.85. Other benefits in the amount of $102,065.24. We had accounts payable for week ending 5/27 of $100,874.75, making a total dispersed last week of $248,129.04. I make a motion we sign.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. These are the check voucher totals, the batch totals. We do review each and every bill and initial every bill that comes in. Figure them all, Bob. We have a copy of the Highway Department work log, which is here in the folder for anybody to look at if they would like. We have a contract for use of facilities. This is for the OCC Child Care Center. They're looking to use the Freight House. They've paid a deposit. The schedule's been okayed by Craig. Make a motion, we approve it. All in favor? Aye.
I just asked that they take the strings and tape from the balloons. They didn't do it last time. They left them on the wall.
We have a request for abatement. This is on map 65, lot 17. The original assessment was $169,700. The revised assessment's $151,900. Results in a difference of $17,800 and a refund or abatement of $372.02. Our assessor recommends that we grant this. Complete inspection was completed. The property was in need of repair at the time of purchase and is currently under renovation. Recommending adjusting the building to reflect the cost to cure the deferred maintenance. The revised assessment is within 10% of the appraised value conclusion. Make a motion, we approve it.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. We have a voucher.
It's a replacement check.
It's a replacement check in the amount of $122.43. I make a motion we sign. All in favor? Aye. We have an outdoor event application from White Horse Addiction to do, it's a grand opening event on the 16th and 17th of June from 3 to 7. It's sent through all of the department heads who have reviewed it. Nobody has any recommendations.
The only thing I wanted to note was when we changed the policy, the agreement was that it was going to come to the Board of Selectmen before it made its way to the department heads. But
Correct.
what I'm finding is that these are coming in to us after they've already been through the department heads, so.
I don't know that it makes a huge difference. I mean, logistically, maybe whoever is handing them out in the selectmen's office ought to notify them that it needs to come to us first. But
Where is the activity?
it's at the White Horse Addiction Center on Route 16B. Anybody have any questions about this? No. Make a motion that we approve it. All in favor? Aye. I don't even find a place on that new form for us to sign off on.
Upper right hand,
Oh, there it
where the sign here flag is.
is. Okay. Good. Notice of intent to cut wood. This is on map 272, lot 22. It's a 10-acre cut on Stoneview Road. The owner is Anthony Jocks. The logger is Brandon Valley. The taxes have been paid. I make a motion we approve it.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. We have another request for abatement. This is on map 97, lot 14 and 15. It's recommended to be granted because these properties were merged with map 97, lot 13 in September of 2016 and should have been deleted prior to the issuance of the spring tax bill. Results in a refund of $428.45. Make a motion we approve it.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. We have a letter from the county commissioners. It's Dear Town Selectmen, as you may know, most Carroll County municipalities collect taxes twice a year, in June and December. However, the New Hampshire law does not require these same municipalities to remit their county tax assessment until December 17th of the taxable year. The net result is Carroll County must borrow a greater amount of money to operate until December. I don't know who does their editing or proofreading, but we request that you make semi-annual payments to us by July 17th and December 17th. Although not completely revenue neutral for the communities, this change would help slow increases in county taxes. We look forward to your response as we search for ways to hold down county tax assessments. Thank you for your assistance in this matter. It's something that we can bring up and discuss at our next finance meeting. But I can tell you in advance, my thoughts are that we are not going to pay, or I hope we don't decide to pay, interest on money that we have to borrow so that we can give money to the county before we're required to by statute.
And that's potentially what we're looking at because it's $450,000 plus,
Twice a year.
yes.
So while I understand why they would like it, I can't imagine that many towns are going to agree to it unless there's a bunch of towns that I don't know of that have millions of dollars sitting around someplace that they don't have use for.
I've already been contacted by the town of Wakefield, who is not on board with it.
Doesn't surprise me. At this point, I guess we'll discuss it at our next finance meeting, but I'm certainly not prepared to take any action on it. Do you have any thoughts on it?
Well, our question is if they're going to request this, but are they going to try to charge us interest if we choose not to pay by July?
I don't think they can. The current state statute is that we have to pay them by December 17th. Good luck with them if they try to charge us interest prior to that, so. We will take that under advisement and continue to look at it, but I don't think anybody could describe it as being warmly received. We have a excavation tax warrant for our tax collector to collect $463. I make a motion we sign it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We have an outdoor event application. The name of it is the Beach River Run. It's to benefit the Ossipee Main Street program. Date of event is 7/1. It has been through all of the department heads and been reviewed and approved. I make a motion, we approve it. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. We have a letter from White Mountain Survey. It's addressed to Roy Barron, one of the cemetery trustees, and it discusses work to be done on the cemetery, Chickville Cemetery.
It's, I believe he brought it up a month or two ago. There's a lot of survey work that needs to be done. So that's the quote that he's received, and they're questioning whether they can proceed with that.
Do they have money in their budget, or?
They don't. We do have money in the selectman's office budget for our survey of town property, which this would fall under. But if you want to earmark all of those funds toward this purpose is the question.
Connie, you might know the answer to this. They also have the cemetery also have a capital reserve fund, correct? Is it a maintenance account? Do you know historically if that's something that surveying could be paid for out of?
We can pay for it.
Out of their trust fund?
Yeah, we got. Well, we could pay for that out of the sale of lots, if you wanted to.
But that's what I'm saying. I know they have a capital reserve account, right?
We have to. There are two capital reserves for cemeteries,
One is perpetual care.
correct?
The other one is simply maintenance and acquisition of additional property.
Yes. Yeah, it's from the sale of lots.
Correct. And that money is normally used for maintenance and/or the acquisition of additional property when we need it. So I think what we should do is we should set up a meeting with the cemetery trustees to come meet with us. And then we'll discuss, because I don't wanna take out all of the surveying money out of the town budget, to do this, and I'm pretty sure it would be completely, not only legal, I think it'd be right for it to come out of that fund that has been generated by the cemetery money. So let's set up a meeting with them if we can for next week, if they're available, and then we'll address that then.
Rick, the only problem I have is I think that has to be passed by town meeting to withdraw it. I'll have to look it up, but that's the way I remember it.
If the selectmen would never designate it as agents to expend,
Correct.
then it would.
It would have to come out by town vote.
No, see if you can look into whether or not they ever were made agents to expend, and
That was the one that was established January of 47, I believe it was. Don't hold me to that date. And it was withdrawal by town.
oh, you 34, were you 30 or 40 years old in 47?
No, wasn't that his 50th birthday?
All right, well, we get a little research to do. Let's see if we can find out let's see if we can find out, if the selectmen were ever made any to expend on that, but we still can meet with them and go over that document we just got.
You could take it out of the, Chickville Church if you wanted to. That's part of that Chickville Church.
I thought that was for the maintenance of. the-
Yeah, I think that is earmarked specifically for the maintenance of the building. I'm pretty sure that's earmarked only for maintenance on the building.
There's another cabinet right
All right, last week we had an application, and we put it off for a week, an application for water service, and this is at 9 Doors Corner Road. There is not a structure on the lot. There are people living in a tent who are requesting the town water be, which does in fact go by there, that they be granted water use. The obvious and most pressing problem with that is that while you can put water on there, there is no place for the water to go. There is no sewer hookup. There is town sewer that goes by there, but without there being a structure, it becomes a health issue to have water going onto the site with no septic system or no ability for it to go into a septic system. So I make a motion that we deny water service to that lot at this point. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. I believe I read this, Ed, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a few people here anyway. Back on May 24th, we submitted a right-to-know request to the Town of Freedom regarding their lawsuit against the town of Ossipee. To recap, the Town of Freedom was widely reported, at least in the press, had created a non-profit for people to donate to so that they could use that money to then sue the town of Ossipee regarding the Westwood Shores campground. I believed, and ultimately the board agreed, that the people in the town of Ossipee have a right to know who is funding that lawsuit against us that we have now spent how many thousands of dollars on?
I will find out for you next week.
Several $1,000s on. So we filed a right to know request for the Town of Freedom. Item number 1 was all documents, no matter what form, including but not limited to printed documents, electronic documents, emails, or any other form of documents regarding the establishment of the nonprofit group created to collect donations to be used toward legal expenses for the lawsuit filed against the town of Ossipee involving the expansion of Westwood Shores. The answer that we received as to request 1 is that the town has no such governmental records. Item 2 that we requested was a list of all donors by name and or entity and the amount of the donation made by each donor. The Town of Freedom answered that as to your request number 2, the town has no list of donors. Attached, please find copies of checks received by the Town of Freedom that set forth the names of the donors. This is the only governmental record that is responsive to request number 2. Request number 3, which is the amount of the donation, attached, please find copies, the same answer with copies of the checks. My first instinct was tonight was to make this response a part of our minutes. However, the Town of Freedom chose to give us copies of everybody's check, which includes their routing number and their account numbers. And I do not think that that is something which I want to be party of releasing to anybody else. We could redact it, or we can ask them to redact it. I don't think we should be giving out people's banking and routing information. I really don't. A thought, Ed? I see you back there kind of nodding your head and...
No, what should have happened is, as soon as that document came into this room, into this public meeting, that is now public. So I can 91A request that right now and get a copy of it.
Within 5 days.
Sure.
Yeah.
But Knowing this is Ossipee, I'm probably gonna get it within an hour. You've been very responsive. Now, this whole issue is strange to me because I don't know how a governmental agency or a unit can just create a nonprofit and have money flow through it. Who's making the decision to expend the funds? The selectmen? I don't know.
I presume, because it's them that's filed suit against us, that what has been reported was that they were establishing a nonprofit for people to donate to. That is what has been advertised, that is what some organizations have put on their website, which is why I wanted to see the documents that created this nonprofit. According to their response, there are no such documents, which I guess means that they never actually formed a nonprofit.
So who's suing you? The town?
The
or this-
Town of Freedom is still suing us, and according to the copies of this check, people have given them several $1,000s in order to do so. One check in particular is for $4,500.
And you can disclose that. You can disclose where that came from.
Well, that one came from Green Mountain Conservation Group, but there's a whole bunch of,
Green Mountain Conservation.
there are a whole bunch of people who have donated their money, which they are certainly entitled to donate their money to whoever they want to, but I do think the people in this town ought to have a right to know who's suing them, who's funding it.
I would think the right avenue would have been if one town is gonna sue another, the money has to be appropriated through the budget process or in its own legal line that's for that purpose, and then it should be, if it's more than a certain amount and it's gonna be expended, there should be a public hearing on that money. I would think, and now if these are gifts, sounds familiar, with the planning board issue we had before, if this is a gift to the Town of Freedom, how are they handling that? Again, how...
Listen, I mean, to a certain extent, those are questions for the Town of Freedom. I can tell you, and I thought this was a little funky from the get-go, that, I mean, if the town of Ossipee felt strongly enough that we were gonna take somebody to court, we don't collect donations to do that. I mean, we have a legal line item in our budget. I am quite sure the Town of Freedom has a legal line item in their budget. And if the Town of Freedom felt that strongly that they needed to file suit in this matter, then I quite frankly think they ought to be spending Freedom taxpayers' money the same way Ossipee taxpayers have had to defend it. I don't think this is rocket science. I thought it was very funky the way this was set up. That's why I asked for copies of the documents to create the fund. According to the response, there are no such documents. I guess maybe the next question ought to be down to DRA as to how can they in fact collect all this money to be used. I don't know.
Did you send the 91 request through the town attorney?
We certainly did. He drafted it.
He should have the answer to that question, because as far as I can see it, looking at this from the outside, you would think the reason why this would not be allowed, and I'm not saying it's not or it is, I'm saying I would think it wouldn't be allowed, is because how is it the governmental unit is supposed to be responsible to the citizens of that town.
Correct.
How can an outside entity come in and be created to do something that the taxpayers may not want them to do?
Oh.
So there's a reason why they have it structured like this. If they, like you said, if they really wanted to sue, and the taxpayers said, yes, we want to do this, then they should have followed a process to do that. Now, if Green Mountain Conservation, as a nonprofit, wanted to use their own funds to sue you, I'm certain they can do that.
Okay.
Anybody can do that. But when you're dealing with governmental units, there's things that you're supposed to follow to prevent. A good example is you wouldn't want George Soros to come in and start dumping money into a nonprofit to help towns sue other towns to get their agenda through.
Well, and it's more that. To me, it's also an issue of fairness. I mean, if the Ossipee taxpayers, and I know we have already spent several $1,000s defending this lawsuit. If the Ossipee taxpayers have to belly up to the bar to defend it, I quite frankly think the Freedom taxpayers ought to belly up to the bar to pursue it. Courts are the only place where we can settle some disputes, and I get that. I just think that this was not a great way to handle it. And I do think that outside influences then can decide. And I'm not saying this occurred. Play out what you just started to say. Maybe there wasn't an appetite on behalf of the Freedom Selectmen. Maybe there wasn't an appetite to spend several thousand taxpayer dollars to sue the town of Ossipee. Okay, there wasn't the appetite to do that. But when 2 or 3 people come in and say, not the problem, we'll donate the money so that you can sue them. Don't you think that that changes their decision, that changes the complete dynamics of their decision making? Because they're no longer spending taxpayer money, they're spending money that somebody else has donated.
Well, that's why I asked who is in control of that nonprofit. And you're telling me that through the 91A request, it says that they have no governmental record of that. Well, then,
But who's controlling the money?
well, yeah, who's making the decision to pay the attorney? Can you disclose which attorney is suing the town of Ossipee?
I don't even know.
Is it their
It's not.
attorney, or is it another private attorney?
I believe it's the town of Freedom. I think it's town of Freedom.
We've only seen selectmen as a planning board. So,
Well, my question would be, is it the governmental town of Freedom or the residential town of Freedom that's actually created this nonprofit?
What has been advertised was from the Freedom Board of Selectmen. What has been advertised.
Right.
But what's on the lawsuit?
Town of Freedom versus Town of
The
Ossipee.
town of Freedom versus the town of Ossipee.
And that could be read either way, either the government town of Freedom or the residential town of Freedom.
They're one and the same. They're one of, if they're
Well, if
using,
the residents are doing the lawsuit, they could represent themselves as the town of Freedom.
no, they
And the
can't.
government can't.
No, they
say,
can't.
No,
you
they
know,
would have to
No,
do,
they can't.
they would have to do it as their own private
Yeah,
entity.
the town of Freedom is its own, that's an entity. You can't, that's no more than, 50 people from Ossipee couldn't get together and decide, we're gonna sue Effingham and we're gonna do it in the name of the town of Ossipee? That wouldn't fly.
Well, have
That's
they
a,
provided the certification for the nonprofit?
Wouldn't they have a 501c number or something?
I would have presumed if they had what they said they had, which is they created a nonprofit, there should have been articles of incorporation, which are filed at the Secretary of State's office. That's how you set up a nonprofit. And then if you want tax exempt status for that, or for people to be able to tax the donations to it, then you have to become a 501c3. So I would have expected if they in fact did, I've set up several nonprofits over the year with the Firemen's Association, and it's a pretty simple process, but you have to do articles of agreement and set up offices and have a plan in place for what you do with whatever funds are left over that you haven't spent for the purposes of the association, et cetera, et cetera. So, I guess, why don't we kick this back to our town attorney and see if he can get some clarification from the town of Freedom as to whether or not, did they in fact establish a nonprofit as has been advertised? Or were they simply accepting donations from people?
And what account?
How can they spend those funds?
Is the account an expendable trust that they created, or is it just their town's bank account?
I can tell you that all of these checks are made out to the town of Freedom.
every one of them.
So it would
And
have,
then there are notations about Ossipee Lake Protection Fund, which, every one of them, Ossipee Lake Protection Fund, which is the fund which they advertised.
I mean, there's a whole system for, if I wanted to donate money to the town for something, I can do that,
Oh, yeah.
but you have to hold a hearing, and it has to be accepted by a vote.
Right.
So if you don't like me, and you like, I don't want your money, I don't want your influence, I don't want anything out of it, you can all vote no. It doesn't look like that happened, that whole process did, maybe it did.
We can accept gifts, and we do accept gifts, but it's done so in a public meeting on a case-by-case basis, and there has to be a hearing, I think, over a certain amount. I don't know if it's on every, but certainly if somebody donated a check today and said, we want to give $50 to the rec department, which happens periodically, then we in this meeting would move and vote to accept that gift. That is the process. If it was over a certain amount, then you have to have a public hearing, a scheduled public hearing, a noticed public hearing, in order to be accepted gift. And I don't see that either one of those happened, and you're talking about thousands of dollars. So,
Well, the-
I guess there are still some remaining questions.
If there is an incorporation of that nonprofit, the AG's office should have that listed. So they have control of every corporation and
Yeah.
everything that's created. So
Well,
they should
it
have
starts off being, I think it actually starts off at the Secretary of State's office, for the formation of it, and then you're right, there's a Division of Charitable Trust at the Attorney General's office.
But if you call them up and you just say, just say the Town of Freedom created a nonprofit to do this, can you check the articles, because you should be able to get it. And you're gonna hear the answer right away, they're gonna say they did what? Because I've heard this a lot, you ask a question and the AG's office like, wait a minute, I don't think they can do that. Or maybe they can, but it'd be interesting to find out.
So let's kick it back to our town attorney, see if we can get some clarification from the Town of Freedom.
Freedom have a town attorney?
Before next week.
Excuse me?
Does the Freedom have a town attorney?
I don't know, if they have to get donations to sue us, then maybe they don't, but normally,
you have
they,
an attorney
normally they
general?
would.
Well, why don't we have our town attorney inquire to their town attorney, what are we being sued for, first of all?
Oh, we know that, we know
Yes.
exactly why we're being sued.
Yeah, but the other thing is, okay, what do they have to do with it?
What does who have to do with it?
Freedom.
The Town of Freedom, this is gonna get very long and very complicated here, and I don't wanna spend too much more time. The Town of Freedom was granted a butter status under a regional impact on the development of Westwood Shores.
That's questionable.
The other side of the lake.
Questionable.
Well, the Town of Ossipee's Planning Board gave conditional approval of the Westwood Shores expansion, conditioned upon the applicant complying with the shoreline protection and DES. Is somebody else?
All state, federal, and local ordinances,
In addition to those,
correct. There were 3 permits.
evidently, the Town of Freedom or those groups who wanted to fund this lawsuit felt that that shouldn't have happened. So they have filed suit. To date, after several $1,000s, the only thing that has happened is our zoning board of adjustment had to have a rehearing.
Now you got another one coming
And now we have another one coming. When is it? Do we know yet?
next week.
Next week. I don't predict it much will change, but the lawyers will keep billing at $250 an hour, and we'll all keep paying.
They've had it 4 times. This will be the 4th time.
Yep. So,
Are we sure who Attorney John Radigan is? Because that is, according to the Ossipee Lake Alliance, that is who the attorney for Freedom is. I was wondering if we knew if that was the town attorney or not.
I really don't know anything about Freedom's inner workings, other than this
Yeah,
was,
No,
different.
actually, I'm just looking up, and that's whose name is coming off of it.
something else.
Yeah, I make a motion, if we're gonna spend money defending a lawsuit from Freedom, we need to stop giving them money.
Well, first of all, as much as I appreciate it, this is not the venue for you to make a motion. Listen, and I don't wanna make fun of that. I mean, you all get to make motions at town meeting, but to here, you get to make us, suggestions to us, and we certainly will take them into account when we vote however we need to
That's
proceed.
one suggestion I make, and the second one is stop funding Green Mountain Conservation, and give them gifts too. And they've done nothing but badmouth us and try to, pardon the word, screw us over.
Thank you for that input.
Do they record their meetings?
The Town of Freedom?
Yeah.
I don't think they're videotaped, are they? Whether they record them, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe the next stop for government oversight is the Town of Freedom.
That'd be nice.
Huh? Anything else under, actually, that puts this one pretty much to red. We'd have to do the red folder for sewer. We have a payroll reimbursement request, and this is from Water and Sewer, in the amount of $3,167.30. I make a motion, we approve it. All in favor? Aye. We have a water and sewer warrant for our tax collector to collect $4,980 even. I make a motion, we approve it.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. We have a water and sewer warrant for the tax collector to collect $280. I make a motion, we approve it.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Did you vote? Oh, I didn't hear you.
Quiet.
You're not that quiet. We have a water and sewer warrant for the tax collector to collect $136.94. I make a motion, we approve it.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. And we have the account summary for the water and sewer bills for the week, beginning June 2nd, and the amount is $17,038.54. I make a motion, we sign. All in favor? Aye. All right, that concludes the red folders.
Rick, on water and sewer.
Yes, sir.
How soon are they gonna start the filter bed? And when-
We've awarded that bid. Brad, do you remember the date, the prospective date to start that?
We didn't have a prospective date to start, but we did have a completion date of July 31st. So, I think they're in the process of setting up the bond right now
Okay.
for us.
I'm just wondering when you're gonna request that,
Oh, out of the capital reserve account? Okay.
Next week.
okay. Well, I mean, you gotta do it.
Yeah.
Meet once a month. I just try to,
Yeah, that's
he
fine.
knows.
All right, Brad, anything about 28-171, anything new?
No, I don't have anything new on that.
How about the covered bridge?
Yes, we, I forwarded up the notice of approval for the preliminary design. We got all the NEPA approvals for all of that, and they were given the approval to go ahead with final design, which is the last phase before it goes out to bid. So that was I thought that was a fairly large step that came through about a week and a half ago, we didn't meet last week here, so. So I talked with DOT down there about that, and Hoyle Tanner, getting everything, geared up on that, so that should be a fairly quick process there, because, basically the preliminary design has a lot of the final design has a lot of the stuff from the preliminary design will be rolled right over to that,
Yep.
so. Just had to go through the process there, getting it all submitted to DOT for their final approvals, and
Can I assume then that everybody signed off on the preliminary, if that's been approved?
everybody signed off on the preliminary, yes.
So no talk of any more discussion about us doing required mitigation or anything like
That's
that?
what I've heard of, but I believe part of the final design also does include DES approval too.
Okay.
So I'm not gonna
Yeah.
go on the limb and say 100% that.
Well, can
but-
you between now and next Monday, make sure that we don't have to do any spotted turtle surveys or anything like
Yeah.
that as part of this project?
They've done that part of the work already as far as the
Well,
brownie
no.
and bats and that stuff's already
Okay.
been brought up and brought to their attention during the preliminary design.
All right. But specifically, I really want to know about them requiring any mitigation.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. We've talked about the 91A request of the Town of Freedom. New business, or anybody got any other old business?
I don't.
Valley Road project closure affected 6/5.
We've been working like crazy trying to get that dam under, the pond under, control up there, so it's not running over the top. And we just achieved that over the weekend here. I think Billy said he went up this morning and it was down 6 inches is what we're shooting for below the freeboard of the top of the dam there, so, depending what this rain does today and tomorrow and stuff, we're anticipating getting going on that this week here, so we'll close, so we've already got the notice on the website and stuff. We prepared the detour signs and everything all ready to put up and everything down at the intersection of Blake Hill, Valley Road, Boltonville Road, to put everybody in the right direction to kind of where they're going up through there.
Yep.
So it's everything's lined up, ready to go, we just.
And once you are able to actually start it, how long before it's completed?
I'd
Ballpark?
say no more than a month, I'd like to
Okay.
think 3 weeks we'd be done with it, but.
Okay. All right. Next thing I've got is on the taxation of unregistered campers.
Yes, I've started researching this, and I'll have some concrete facts for you next week.
Awesome. All right, any other new business?
Oh, God, no.
By way,
Anybody get their boat in the water yet?
huh?
Anybody got their boats in the water yet?
I don't know. What does that have to do with us?
Boat ramps?
Oh, the boat ramp. That's all, that's new/old business. The boat ramp is open. It has been, it was open for use the Thursday before Memorial Day. There's still work to be done down there, but they were making sure that it was open and usable, albeit there is a limitation on parking. So it is actually progressing, which is a good thing.
Because Thursday I got, you said it opened Thursday, I guess, because that's the other Thursday before I took off for the weekend.
Yep.
And I actually got stuck in the piles of sand and stuff they had piled up.
It's not pretty down there, but it was open.
So,
Yep.
by way of new/old business, we had a really good meeting this afternoon with consultant on the water department and water rates, if you will. We had an opportunity, Brad, what's the organization he's from again?
Granite State Waterworks.
Granite State Rural Water Association.
Close.
Actually, at no cost to us or the water system. He spent a lot of time over here, and he's made a lot of findings, quite a few recommendations. We're not done yet. We're working on it, and right now there is no recommended change in the rates at all, at least not now. We are discussing, we have previously approved in this meeting to replace 100 of the 340 meters. And based on our meeting with him, we're quite sure that the meters are part of the problem. We are not accurately capturing the amount of water that we are supposed to be billing for. So we are actually looking at potentially doing more than the 100 this year and see if we can't shorten that period up, but we'll announce that later on at some point, but we are still working on it. Second public input. Sir?
The current Ossipee zoning ordinance refers to the use of campers, RVs, whatever, for 14 calendar days on a lot.
Correct.
In the rural residential area. We currently have a situation at 25 Old Mill Road in Winsock Village that I reported to Steve McConerty, I guess it was about a month ago, that we had an RV, there's an existing home, but there was an RV that additional people were living in through the course of the wintertime and into the spring. Steve went and made notice, and then they promptly posted the property. They told him they were gonna move the camper off the parcel to a campground. They have not. And when I followed up with Steve today, he's like, his hands are tied unless the town decides to take action about people continuing to live in the RV. It's in direct violation of the current zoning ordinance.
They so that I'm clear, Steve went there, told them they were in violation. They told him they were gonna move the camper. They haven't moved the camper, and people are still living in it?
Correct.
They posted the link.
Correct to all.
What do you mean they posted?
No trespassing.
Okay.
Can't come along.
Okay. And that's what they told our zoning officer they can't go on there? Okay. All right.
And I know that there are other circumstances within town where we have the same occurrence, and it's hard to gauge, well, when are the 14 calendar days being utilized and everything else? And I'd ask that the selectmen look at drafting an ordinance so that if we have to at town meeting next year, we have a formal process for people utilizing vehicles like that on parcels within the town. So that they pull there's some way to account for the days of use, other than you have to catch them in the RV, camper, whatever.
I understand, I think what you're asking, but that seems to me to be a more appropriately defined within the zoning ordinance. Than it would be to create a separate ordinance.
But the zoning ordinance calls for no more than 14 calendar days.
Yeah.
But there is the only, I guess then I ask the selectmen is, what is gonna be the mechanism to police and enforce the zoning ordinance? Because that is your realm. You have to
I get
enforce the zoning ordinance.
But what difference would, where you're losing me
Yep.
is, all right, so you make an ordinance, another ordinance, you already got the zoning. Now you make another ordinance that says 14 days, but they have to get a permit. Well, when they don't get a permit, then you're right back to where you were when they weren't abiding by the zoning.
Well, from what Steve's telling me is that the town doesn't have the wherewithal to pursue this unless you take it to the town attorney.
I don't think it's a
and
case
everything
of
else.
wherewithal. I know we recently went all the way to the mat, if you will, with one up on Doors Corner Road. And we spent several $1,000s in attorney fees to finally resolve it. The vast majority of people who utilize a camper abide by the rules. There is a provision for people to be able to stay in a camper while they're building a house.
Yep.
The vast majority of people abide by the rules. For those that don't, and
I understand.
we all know there's some that don't.
Well, then I'm gonna formally request that the selectmen take into consideration enforcing this situation at 25 Old Mill Road in West Ossipee.
And we'll address it with our,
Attorney.
we'll address it first with our building inspector and find out what he has to say. So-
And that is one of the issues that we are working on when we are working on the amendments to the zoning ordinance through the planning board. So instead of creating a separate ordinance, we will correct the one that's there.
Yep, thank you. Second issue is the continuing issue, or maybe it's not a continuing issue, is I know that the selectmen went to the Longo property up in West Ossipee and looked at what was there and made recommendations to him about operating at the property. Can you enlighten me as to what was told to Mr. Longo?
I cannot, but
I went there with Steve
I did too.
and ended up talking to him. So far, he has complied with everything Steve said. He had to move one of those, I don't know, what do they call
Railroad cars.
it, shed
Yeah.
with
Yep.
both sides.
Yep.
He had to move one of those to come in compliance with the distance from the road.
Well, but it's the distance from the road right-of-way. It's 40, as I read it, it's 40 feet from the road right-of-way. The road right-of-way is well off the pavement. There's a utility pole that sits about 15 feet off the pavement. That is, just beyond that is the edge of the road right-of-way through there. It's 100 feet wide through that portion of West Ossipee.
beyond the light pole?
Pavement, no.
Beyond the
it's
pavement. Steve went from the pavement 40 feet in.
Correct.
Told him he had to move everything.
That is not the road right-of-way, that is the edge of the pavement. The point of measurement for anything for the planning board or the zoning board is the right-of-way and property lines. So the point of measurement is incorrect in what was enforced up there.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm not disputing what you're telling me, we'll look into it.
Correct. Because I wanted to make sure that there wasn't something going on in terms of, we have zoning setbacks that everyone else has to comply with, and somehow it was negotiated that he didn't have to meet the mandated setback within the zoning
There's been no
ordinance.
negotiation that I'm aware of in any way, shape, or form with anybody
Okay.
on issues like that.
Well,
Listen, I don't like some of our rules.
Yep,
That's not for me to decide. If that is the rule, then every single person needs to abide by that rule. If we want to change the rules, then we all get together, town meeting, and we change the rules.
in my opinion, with projects that I deal with, it is up to us to determine where our area of responsibility is, and that is the edge of the right-of-way or the sideline property lines that we then have to make our measurements from for complying with whatever ordinances are in place. I think Mr. Longo has to do the same thing. He has to determine where the right-of-way is, so he knows where the setback is. And the town needs to see that evidence of what he's measuring from to comply.
Well, I don't necessarily disagree with that statement, but you also need to throw into the fact that how many other businesses right there don't meet those exact same rules?
Well, at some point, the town we have a zoning ordinance that's in place.
Yep.
And at some point, we need to play catch-up to try to get people in my opinion, to get in compliance. We have an ordinance that was voted on and approved by the townspeople.
I
There
get
should be
that.
an expectation that when people are going to operate within the town, that they have to comply with that zoning ordinance. It's an issue of fairness, in my opinion.
Well, it is an issue of fairness, but there's also an issue called common sense, which, in all I'm saying to you, and I would say the same was true of him as if it were you and your house. If your house is sitting 10 feet from the road, I personally think it makes very little sense to make the neighbor make his 25 feet from the road. If in fact, they're on the same road, but this one was built 30 years ago and this was built today.
There's a process. There's the zoning board of adjustment that those people have to go through to accommodate that, and I understand that. But it has to be recognized instead of being ignored. That's the point I'm making.
Well, but who's ignoring it?
You just said that in terms of Mr. Longo, in terms of he has setbacks that he has to comply with, because
Correct.
everything happened there after the zoning ordinance was put in place.
Correct.
So people shouldn't be allowed to do something and then we say, well, the abutters, there are other properties that are they didn't comply. Well, if they didn't comply, you have to determine, was it an issue of compliance before or after zoning was put into effect? If the issue of compliance is that they built after the zoning ordinance was put in place, then I think it has to be identified and they have to make an attempt to comply. That might mean going to the zoning board to now bring their structure, if they built too close to the road, that there's a paper trail for that zoning board of adjustment approval for that non-complying structure.
You know, the thing with Mr. Longo is when Steve was there, Steve gave him, the 40 feet off the edge of the road and told him he had to move everything from there back. In his defense a little bit, he did do that. And he was told, you can't have all these cars unregistered, so.
He's still violating that, but that's another
Well,
issue.
he moved some to different parts of his
There's still two
properties. He's
there.
got one across the street now, but, as far as when I was there and what Steve talked to him about, so far he's done. I mean, if the measurement isn't right, I mean, it's something probably we gotta take care of, but, I was there when Steve measured it.
Because I was very specific in my emails to the town that it was talking about the right-of-way and not the edge of the paved road. It was the right-of-way, because that's what the zoning ordinance references. And the conversation I even had with Steve when he responded to my initial emails is I said, Steve, the right-of-way up there is 100 feet. It's not the edge of the pavement. Basically, that utility pole is inside the right-of-way. So even if you generally used as a reference point that utility pole, you would have to go 40 feet. You would have to go 40 feet from that, which would push everything way back.
I just don't know that there's, and I'm not saying that you're right or you're wrong, I just don't know that there's ever been such a strict interpretation of what you want, what you're saying. What you just mentioned, the fact that you're suggesting that we use the utility pole as a frame of reference, knowing full well that that's not the boundary.
No, but there are if you talk to DOT, and Brad can back this up, is that there are maps for what's going on with the road right-of-way.
I know what road, trust me, I've spent a couple of days doing this too.
So there is information out there as to where that right-of-way is in front of that parcel. So a point of measurement can be done from that. But Rick, I'm at zoning boards, I'm at planning boards for hearings for projects and like that, and we have to go through our checklists to make sure that we comply, and if we can't comply, then we have to prepare our waiver, and we have to provide the support documentation so that the board very methodically can go through and understand what the rationale is and whether it's appropriate.
I get all of that, but what I'm saying to you is this. All right, so in that section of Route 16, there is 100-foot right-of-way. I agree. There are other sections of Route 16 that there is not a 100-foot right-of-way. Would you also agree?
Correct.
Okay, so it seems to me, without being strictly adherent, are we worried about how far the business is off the road, or are we worried about how far the business is away from the right of way?
The zoning ordinance talks about the right of way.
Okay.
And I would bet that Connie would back me up in terms of the way things are written.
And what, I guess what I'm saying is when you've got, just as a, for instance, the Watson's gas tanks, their gas pumps are
That was all before.
15 feet off the road.
But that was before zoning.
And you therefore think that, oh, okay.
Everything when you have when an ordinance goes into place, everything, all the practices that are to occur after that are supposed to comply.
Okay. So you're
If
suggesting
you would like
even-
to if you would like to say something contrary to that for the record, please do. Then I'll go to the planning board and I'll go to the ZBA and.
It's not that I'm trying to be contrary, but even what you just said as far as where the light poles are, doesn't necessarily reflect the edge of the right of way.
No, but because I know I've seen the plan, I've seen what's going through there, I'm saying as a general reference point, most of the utilities associated with these state highways everything's constructed within the state highway, unless there's been an easement granted for stormwater runoff or whatever, or for a transformer. And in that area, I know that utility pole is inside the road right-of-way, which means that right-of-way is actually on the other side, away from the pavement from that utility pole. That's where that right-of-way cuts across that frontage.
So how far is that utility pole from the edge of pavement that Steve used?
Oh, it's like 15 feet. Because again, you're talking about a paved area that's, let's say, 30 feet wide. But yet
Oh, it's a
you
lot
have
more than
100
30 feet.
No, but I'm saying, but you have 100-foot right-of-way, and most people are used to dealing with 50-foot right-of-ways. That's where when you look at these state highway right-of-ways that are that wide, people, their sense of scale and everything else, and they start zeroing in on measuring from center line of road or edge of pavement to try to approximate things, and it's like, no, you have
But that's all you're ever doing, unless it's been absolutely surveyed, is you're generally running from your center line of your road.
But there's a responsibility on the property owner to determine where that is. I'm bringing it up, and I would like to have the issue looked at again more closely,
So
please.
he's saying it's 50 feet, you're saying it's 50 feet from the center of the road?
What is?
You just said
No,
it's
no,
100
no,
foot.
the road right-of-way up there is, you have to look at the DOT maps, because you'll find edge of pavement, it's, not all of it is strictly smack in the center. So you can't make a measurement from like the middle of the pavement or the edge of the pavement, and then assume that it's gotta be X number of feet. There are plans, correct, Brad? There are plans available that somebody could use to make that point of measurement.
It says in the zoning ordinance, if there's question as to how it's been determined by the zoning enforcement officer, it should be appealed to the ZBA for them to make the determination of where the,
What about the stuff that you got grandfathered?
It says if the
This
district
wasn't grandfathered.
classification of any
Hold on a
land-
second.
If the district classification of any land is in question, the zoning board of adjustment shall determine the location of the district boundary upon an appeal from an administrative decision of the zoning enforcement officer. That was amended in March of 2015.
It's roadside commercial, so it's not a question of what the zoning
Right.
is for that lot.
No, but it's saying a district boundary shown on the I'm sorry, I didn't read the beginning of it. A district boundary shown on the zoning map is approximately following the center line of a right-of-way of road, shoreline of a body of water, or property line, or other man-made or natural feature, shall be construed as following such center line, shoreline, property line, or other man-made or natural feature. But the classification shall be determined by the ZBA if it's in question.
The district isn't in question for that,
Okay.
it's roadside commercial.
Yep.
So to me, that's a non-issue.
No, I still logistically am trying to figure out then how is our zoning officer supposed to know the boundary that you're suggesting that he used, which is a strict right-of-way boundary?
Well, along the state highway, especially with all the work that we're having done with the upgrade of the roadways, that there are plans that.
I know there are plans, but they're not, that plan doesn't mark it out on the ground.
No, but it will reference monuments that Steve can then point to, he can point to the property owner when they come in looking to construct something. You know, whether it's install a sign, it's to build a building, it's to do whatever, so that they know that they can comply with zoning. He can point them to the state DOT highway maps so they can find, because there are monuments along the roadway. They might not be specifically right in front of that particular property because they might have been wiped out, but there'll be others that can be used so that.
Surveying pins. Surveying pins?
Correct, that's what I'm referring to, whether it's granite bounds, in most cases, it's these concrete markers and things like that, but there are reference points
Oh,
that can
I'm
be
sure
utilized.
there are along that any surveyor could utilize. I don't know how much any town building inspector is going to be able to recognize what is the legal boundary of that state road.
And again, my clients, it's their responsibility to prove where the limits of their property are.
Right,
So
but wait a minute, you're asking us to disprove what this guy is saying.
So if I go and I get a copy of the state highway map for that area, and I can show where everything is, and I present it to the town, who can then present it to Steve, so it's apparent where the limits are, what would you do then?
I'll look at anything. I guess where you're losing me is one on your motive or on,
I'm looking for the development that's gonna occur in the town to be in compliance with the current zoning ordinance.
okay,
Okay, because we're gonna get the highest values for these roadside commercial properties, which is gonna help with the tax base, which is gonna help with the base rate, selfishly for me in West Ossipee for our fire precinct. Okay, because we're gonna benefit if we have higher value commercial properties. The rate of the fire precinct should drop, so that our residential, so that the existing property owners up there will see our rate fall more closely to the other two precincts in town. Plus,
you're looking then, are you investigating all of the properties on Route 16 in West Ossipee?
I'm taking a look at different things. I'm looking for the obvious, the
Okay.
things that are readily apparent, correct?
All right. And you think it changes the value if they are 10 feet farther off the road than 10 feet closer to the road?
I think it encourages people to develop their properties responsibly, which helps somebody to consider, because we've got vacant land up there that people want to redevelop. If they see that people are taking care of their property, so you look at what was done with where Aroma Joe's and Subway is. They did, in my opinion, they did a very nice job developing that property. Where we now have the market, farm to table little market, the property that was redeveloped next to the fire station.
Yep.
We now have a very significantly large parcel behind the former Frankson Furniture parcel. We have the former Johnson Gas. We have that vacant lot that's across from Luongo like that, and maybe even potentially what David Sands currently owns where the Tramway Marketplace is. If we hit a critical, in my opinion, I think if we hit a critical mass with people developing their properties responsibly up there, those properties will be more attractive to other businesses, which will make them.
I wouldn't disagree with that, but I just, in this particular scenario, and I think I understand the concern, because when you make mention of aesthetics and everything, I get that.
Yep.
It is not gonna be 1 ounce aesthetically more pleasing 10 feet farther off the road than it is 10 feet closer to the road. And what I'm saying to you is this, I don't have a problem making sure that people comply with the rules. What I will not and won't do is be a party to a witch hunt.
Yep.
I won't. Again, I think they need to apply to everybody, and some of it makes very little sense. When it comes into the issue of enforcement, that's where I think some discretion needs to be used. Using the analogy that I did, if there's already a house 10 feet off the road, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me to require this one to be 25. I'm only one person, so. Thank you. We'll take that up with Steve and discuss it some more, I guess. Anybody else have anything else under public input? If not, we have a need for actually 2 non-publics. One is on a tax matter, the other is on a personnel matter. So it's under RSA 91A32C being a tax matter, and 2B being, 2A, I'm sorry, being a personnel matter. Losing my mind. Poll the board. Sam Martin?
Yes.
Glover,
Yes.
and Rick Morgan, yes. We will be back as soon as we can. If you folks would like to come upstairs with us, please.
Bob, real quick, we'll approve our personnel policy manual tonight, so we'll sign it and scan it, and we'll forward you a copy.
Make a motion, we reopen the public hearing. All in favor? I make a motion that we seal the minutes of the just now held non-public session,
Sessions.
discussions. One was on a tax matter, the other on the personnel matter. There was a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anything else? Ms. Sullivan?
I could talk for hours, but we don't have time. I was gonna say, I can talk for hours. Don't ask me.
I did add you to our agenda.
You did.
I did.
Anything else, Bob?
No, I don't.
No.
Okay. Ms. Sullivan?
Yeah.
If nothing else, I make a motion we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you.
I don't have a say, but I said aye anyway.
It's always nice,